Without any further ado, let's get the webinar started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mastering the Essentials for Business Ownership, Planning, and Digital Marketing webinar presented by Pace and Evia. Today's topic is managing cash flow. Oh, very important. My name is Jeannie Yang, and I'm a business and loan counselor at Pace. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with the City of LA Economic and Workforce Development Department, EWDD, and BusinessSource Pico-Union Westlake region, operated by Pace Business Development Center. This webinar will be recorded, and at the end of the webinar, you'll be asked to participate on our survey. So please make sure that you complete the survey because it's going to help us to build better webinars for the future. And before we begin our today's topic, let me do a quick introduction on PACE. PACE is a nonprofit organization established in 1976, and we offer one-on-one business counseling, credits and asset building, business and financial plan development, webinars, and trainings to help you establish a brand new business or help your existing business. We can also guide you through the procurement services if you're interested. The great fact is all our services are free. So if you have any questions about our services, lending products, or any program, please visit our website, pacelabdc.org, or give us a call. All right, our guest speaker today, Valerie Rivas from India. Pleasure to have you back with us, Valerie. Let's get started.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, and of course, Pace, for your continued partnership. They have been with me since my corporate journey all the way on to my entrepreneur journey. So I definitely thank you so much for all your support and continued partnership. So thank you again for the opportunity of being here. But yeah, so really excited about talking about cash flow management. But before I get started, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who I am for those of you that don't know me. I do see you all logging in, so love the attendance today. I see some familiar names, so thank you so much for your support and also joining. And so hopefully today you'll find today very fruitful for you and your business. So a little bit about myself. My name is Valerie Rivas. I am the CEO and founder of Evia. And at Evia, we help entrepreneurs fund, innovate, and grow. And we do that by providing consulting services as to where to go as far as getting access to capital, and then also make sure that you are growing into the direction you want to go for your business. Staying innovative by providing different AI-driven solutions and automation to be able to save the business owner money, and of course, digital marketing strategies. I'm also really involved in the community, and I'm usually out in the field doing some empowerment sessions, also some financial literacy, most all around to be able to help the entrepreneur scale up and improve their business. I do sit on a few nonprofit boards. They all support entrepreneurship and business owners, and soon to be joining a really, really exciting board that I can't talk about it just yet until it becomes official. So really excited for all the good things that are happening. Well, today we're going to be talking about predict, protect, and prosper cash flow planning essentials. And today's session is actually a really, really important one. And they all kind of go in hand as far as this series, right? It all is linked up into you being able to grow as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and be able to for you to be sustainable. Now, as far as cash flow, this is actually one of the number one reasons as to why businesses fail. And we're going to navigate a little bit through that and talk about it all. But this actually comes with from the SBA, which is a really reliable source. Poor cash flow management is actually the number one reason why businesses fail. So, which is why today is really important. Happy to sit down with you on a one-on-one basis after this. So I'll definitely send you the link so that we can go ahead and meet. But here are some of the reasons as to why cash flow management is so important and the reasons why these businesses fail. So even profitable business die from lack of cash. Okay, so you could be really profitable, but maybe waiting on a bunch of different receivables, which we'll talk about how to be able to navigate that. But no cash reserves or slow months, especially for those of you. We talked about procurement. I know Jeannie talked about procurement earlier. Sometimes you're doing business with the government or you're doing some public work. Sometimes they do slow pay. Actually, they, for the most part, always slow pay. So that you can get paid from anywhere from 3 months to maybe even sometimes a year. I just recently had a client say, you know what, Valerie, we just did a job 6 months ago, 6.5 months ago, and we're just now getting a check. So just think about all of the different things that have to happen between you getting paid, but then also being able to navigate your operating expenses and be able to operate your business. Relying on future sales instead of your current liquidity. Very important that you know when to access capital and to do it before you grow too quickly. And I know it sounds amazing, right, for you to grow quickly, but what if you're not ready for it? You don't know how many times I had customers come to me and clients come to me and say, Valerie, you know what? We don't need any money right now. We're good. We're growing. But then all of a sudden they get $1 million contract, and guess what? They are not prepared for the upfront costs for them to be able to navigate that particular contract. I think all of you here could actually agree that it takes money to make money, right? Let's just be realistic. Without money, there's a lot of things that you're not able to move around. So very important that you get on top of that before you get in trouble of not being able to have enough cash reserves to be able to do your projects and operate your business. Clients paying late or long term. So typically for a private client is anywhere from 30 to 90 days. Sometimes if their industry is slow, that's something else that you may have to also consider. What kind of clients are you taking in and what are those industry trends? What are they doing? Are they in the restaurant business? Is the restaurant business in that particular area maybe something where it's changing and shifting directions where maybe everybody's doing Uber Eats, or maybe you live in a really trendy area. So those are all things that you need to consider. Are you dealing with manufacturers? Right now, there's a lot of different things going on with tariffs. Those are some things that you also have to think about. So think about outside of just what your industry is doing, but also your clients because those are going to be the ones paying you. Overspending before revenue stabilizes. So, as you know, as a business owner and business, we have industry trends. Depending on the season, you may be a little bit busier than others. So, those are some things that you need to take in consideration. And then financing operations with high interest debt. So, I've had clients would tell me, Valerie, I need a loan right now. I had to get an emergency loan at 35%. That is an outrageous amount of interest that you'd be paying. So, those are something else that can also hinder your cash flow. And then, of course, not understanding burn rate or your runway. Now, those are just some things to keep in mind, just very quickly, of some of the things that will lead to poor cash flow management. And today we're going to navigate on certain things that you might be able to do, when to access capital, and some of those things of that nature. Now, our agenda today is probably going to be a little bit longer than usual just because there's a lot of things to cover and I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. Remember, today, it doesn't mean that you have to leave out of this class knowing everything, but at least having some sort of understanding of what your cash flow looks like and what you need to do to be able to navigate. So we're going to talk about understanding cash flow and its importance, key financial statements. We're going to go through a sample balance sheet and we'll go ahead and email out a sample balance sheet and a profit and loss as well. Creating your cash flow plan, protect and prosper strategies, options to manage your cash flow, and then managing your receivables. And then we're going to close out with our references where we got this information from, but not only that, in conclusion, and see what other questions you might have for us. Now, understanding cash flow. It says cash flow statements detail how cash enters and exits your business during a reporting period. So typically, depending if you are just starting off, I mean, obviously you're kind of living month to month as you're trying to scale up. But once you stabilize a little bit, you may want to see what your whole year will look like. So if you think about these bigger companies, when they start navigating their budgets, they typically do that a year before, because based on their sales that year, they're able to forecast what their sales are going to look like the following years. These statements offers insight into operating, investing, financing activities, providing a clearer picture of liquidity and the overall health of your business. So today, you're actually going to find out the importance of being able to keep your QuickBooks or your accounting software up to date. And the reason for that is because you'll be able to get a bird's view as to the health of your business and maybe some changes and budget changes that you should make so that you don't get yourself in trouble. Typical cash flow statement is organized into three different sections. Your operating activities, so what are you spending your money on? Investing activities, so where's your money going? What are you investing in? Are you investing towards maybe 401ks? Are you doing some sort of side investments? Maybe you're buying a commercial property. Maybe you're buying some equipment. And then also financing activities. So what is it that you're getting money for and what is that money doing for you? So every time you think about accessing capital, and you got to understand, I do come from a lending background and financing background. So I was in finance for over 20 years. And so for me, it's really important for everybody to understand if you are to get a loan today, what is that money going to do for you? So really important that you think about that because a lot of the times when we sit with clients, they're like, no, I don't need money right now. My cash flow is good. I have money in the bank. But at the same time, if I position it a little bit different and I say, okay, Mr. Client, let's just say right now, I say Valerie Rivas Evia is writing you $100,000 on a check, but you don't have to pay it back. And the only reason you wouldn't pay it back is if you have a plan for your business and everything's going to go towards your business. What are you going to spend that money on? Number one, ask yourself. And number two, what is that money going to do for your business? Is it going to give you a higher sales power? Are you going to be able to hire more employees, more help? Are you going to get additional equipment that might be able to save you time and money? So those are some things that you think you need to think about. We're not out here getting into debt to be able to go buy a Ferrari or a Louis Vuitton purse. We're here to get money for your business and what is it going to do for you? So some things to think about. Now, let's take a look at this diagram here on the right. And it's really important that you understand this and that you also understand how fast, one, it's taking for your clients to pay you. And number two, how long is it going to take for you to be able to reinvest that money back to your business? So let's go through this here really quickly. So here it says inventory. Okay, so this could also be a service that you're providing. Inventory, you got to remember there's usually inventory, which means you have to have some cash in hand to be able to purchase some inventory. So here we're taking a look at inventory. So what do we do with the sale of the sale of the inventory or the service? Then we go through a period and where we actually have to sell that product or service, right? So when you come here, we're now in the accounts receivables. Now, there's two types of business, right? There's more than two types of business, but primarily there's those cash on hand businesses or your retail businesses, right? Where you go to the mall and let's just say you go to a store. I can't even think of a store right now. Let's just say you go to Apple. And when you go to Apple, you're there to purchase some AirPods. Once you pay for your card, your debit card or cash, you leave with the product. So that sale is completely done. There's also those service businesses and where they may require repayment terms. What does that mean? That they have a contract with the client or has some sort of agreement with the client. Hopefully it's a contract. And it'll tell you as to when that payment is due. And so what ends up happening with some of these payments, sometimes either one, clients don't pay at all, or two, they pay or they pay on time or they slow pay. So you start running into trouble when you have too many clients that are actually slow paying. Beth, I'll make sure to get that over to you as soon as I can. And so when it comes to accounts receivable, you got to understand what is the period that you're waiting and also what industries you are also letting essentially borrow money, right? Because they're not paying you until after a certain amount of time. So once that happens, the client pays you and this becomes cash. Right? And so now it becomes a reality and where you actually getting paid for the service or the inventory or product that you provided, or both. Sometimes there's both. Once we do that, you then now have to pay those who you have to pay for operating your operating expenses, but then also it could be your accounts payable. So it could be people that you owe money, lenders that you owe money. Once you do that, you have to do it all over again. And so where where some of our clients end up getting in trouble is in the accounts receivables stage because they get stuck there. And when you have too many clients there, what does that mean? Yes, you may get that revenue in a certain amount of time, but if you don't have money during that period, there's a few things that could happen. One, maybe you have to shut your doors. You may not have money for rent. You might not have money for yourself or to be able to pay for your employees, which is really important for you to be able to navigate your business. Now, I know right now we just went through the cycle of cash flow cycles. Does anybody have any questions? And I see that our chat is really active today, which I love. Let's see. And let me write my email real quick here for you, Beth.
No particular question.
All right. Doesn't look like we have any questions. Beth, I went ahead and wrote my email, and then you'll get all my information, including a Calendly link and where you can actually book an appointment with me as well. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. So there's three key financial statements, and you may or may not be familiar with them, but we will briefly go through them today and kind of get an idea of what it is that you need to look at. Now, usually, typically, investors want to see your balance sheet because they kind of want to see, where the money is, where the equity is, and then also want to see maybe what kind of investments you also have. So, balance sheet kind of gives us the lender where your money's at and where you're investing in, and maybe even some things that we may have to replace, such as equipment and things like that. So, balance sheet would be one, and it provides a snapshot of assets, liability, and equity at a specific point in time, revealing your net worth. There's also the income statement, which is also known as a profit and loss. This is actually one of my favorite ones because it goes line by line of what you're spending your money on. But then not only that, but being able to see where is it that you might be able to make some adjustments. And then, of course, there's a cash flow statement. So this tracks cash received and paid out across operating, investing, and financing activities to assess liquidity. Something that's not on here, and just in case you are a contractor, which I do see a couple on here that I do recognize their names, you may also have a WIP report. That's also called a work in progress report. And so on there, it pretty much tells you where your project stands. So that might be something else that the lender may want to ask, or maybe even one of your investors that's trying to purchase your business. Now let's go through a sample balance sheet. So on here, you see that this customer, and it'll typically tell you because it'll tell you maybe they have $20,000 in cash, they may have 40,000 in Wells Fargo, and it'll tell you on there where the monies are. But on here, if you see this client right over here, um, you see that they have $20,000 in cash. They're waiting about $15,000 in accounts receivable, which is actually not too bad. And they have about $10,000 in inventory. So the current assets much match the total fixed assets and liabilities. So here, if you take a look here, it says total current assets is 45,000 and your total liabilities is 45,000. There has been times in where I review the tax returns and unfortunately the accountant does not match those. So if you are seeking a loan or doing something like that, just really quickly, this is something really brief that you can check and make sure that it matches. It has killed or also been able to, it has become a problem in where we either have to have the accountant or go through a different accountant to be able to amend those tax returns. So something as simple as that could actually, especially if you're going through a traditional lender, they're really black and white whether or not things are the way they should be. So those are some things that could actually kill your deal also or your loan. So total current assets is 45,000. It looks like they have 30,000 in equipment and $5,000 in furniture. So they have a total of fixed assets of 35,000. As I mentioned, investors would like to see this because it kind of gives you a little bit of a bird's view of what your overall picture looks like. Total assets, they're at 80,000. Accounts payable, so they owe $12,000. They also have short-term loans of 8,000. Some of the loans that could also be here as well that is not listed in this example could be maybe money that's payable to you. So money that you let the company borrow, but then that money needs to go back to you. So that's something that your accountant can help you with. So it looks like this current liabilities, this particular client has 20,000. And long-term loan, they have a $25,000 debt on there that they have. So they owe a total of 45,000. So the owner's equity is 35,000. Again, just really quickly, this kind of gives you a bird's eye. It doesn't mean you have to understand it 1,000% or anything like that, but it's something for you to be familiar with because it kind of gives you an idea of where you stand and where your overall health financially is with your assets and liabilities and any type of loans that you may have for the business. So on here it says assets must equal liabilities plus equity. This simplified example shows how resources, assets are financed through debts, liabilities, and owner's investments. Again, if you do have a accounting software, it'll do it for you. And this is something that you don't have to do manually. Sometimes you may need to do that depending if you are getting a loan or working with an investor. If that is the case, I believe PACE has resources that might be able to help you with those type of things. So just make sure you're always going back to your consultants, such as myself, and then also PACE as to where you can go for certain resources when it's needed. Now let's go through a sample profit and loss statement. This is actually my favorite one because it's actually really easy to understand really quickly. You really just get all of your sales revenue and then deduct all of the different operating expenses. And immediately on there, it'll tell you where your money is going to. So your accounting software should be essentially to be able to do this for you. But on here, we see a sample of where their sales revenue is 100,000. So what does this mean? So based on their sales of their inventory or their service, or it might be both, they are getting sales of $100,000 a year. Cost of goods sold. This means how much money does it take for them to actually provide that service or actually buy that inventory. So in this case, they're actually at 50%. So their gross profit, meaning that their profit immediately, and this is something, a number that you may want to research based on your industry because not all profit margins are the same, but then also not all profit margins are should be the same depending on your industry. There's some profit margins that are a lot higher than other industries, so you want to make sure that you are in line with what your industry is. So, for example, let's just say that your profit margins are 10%, but in your industry everybody else is doing 20%, then you know that there's some adjustments on there. Either one, you have to change your supplier or you have to change yeah, most likely your supplier or the service that it's costing you for you to actually get that product or service. Rent expenses looks like they have $10,000, and as I their rent expense is $10,000 a year, and sometimes this number before when I used to look at a lot of these, it used to be about sometimes it would be a warehouse, it'd be about 400,000, and so at that point I'm like, okay, why are you spending so much money? How big is this warehouse? Let's evaluate and see if you can actually purchase this property instead of having to rent it out. So you don't know how many times I was able to help clients and where we realized like, okay, it's costing you $400,000 for you to be able to have this rent, but if you purchase it, not only do you get all the different benefits that I'm not an accountant, not going to go through them, but there's a lot of different benefits of owning your own building as well. Salary expenses. Here's something else. And unfortunately, I know that's happened a lot throughout my career and where salaries just end up getting a little bit expensive. So they have to change the compensation structure for them to be able to keep their doors open or, stay with the profit margins that they'd like to stay in. Also, marketing expense. On here, this sometimes could be a huge number, so you may want to adjust that as well or see what other marketing strategies you may want to explore. And then utility expenses. So if you see here, this client, even though they had a gross profit of 50,000, after they have their gross profit, they actually have additional operating expenses, which could include some of the things here, but depending on your industry, you may have more or you may have less. If you're a home-based business, obviously you're not going to have a rent expense, or of course, if you don't have employees or pay yourself a salary. So here are some things to look at. Always take a look on here and see what are some things that you can actually reduce. And also as an entrepreneur and business owner, make sure that you're keeping an open mind because there's a lot of different people that may approach you of, hey, let's explore your banking solutions and see what you have now and what our company might be able to offer. Hi, Nina. Yes, it will be recorded and it should be available in about 48 hours usually. And then total operating expenses was 33,000. So this particular company here, whether they are in line as far as the net profit or not, they're still showing profits, which is really, really important. Now, if this says zero as a net profit, I mean, I guess it's not too bad, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're making any money. If you have a negative number, so if this was in the red here, this definitely is a concern because this means that you're not making any kind of money. Now, I think all of us as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're in the business of making money, not losing money. So definitely keep it. This will be one of your best friends to be able to navigate to one, either make different adjustments, take a look at your cost of goods sold and see if you have a very competitive supplier, or sometimes you may have to change it or create different terms of like, hey, what if I pay cash? Or what if I, pay you right away? What are some of the things that you might be able to navigate to be able to reduce those costs? Any questions on this one? Lily, don't I don't have any type of recommendation as far as accountant. What I can tell you is what is the most popular, which would be there's three. There's QuickBooks, there's Quicken, and I believe the last one is Xerox, Xerox. So those would be the three primary ones that I would say. And then Shelly, yes, absolutely. Pace will email the link of the recording, and I believe it's also you can also find it on their YouTube page, and I believe, and then also at their website.
Yes.
Thank you, Jeannie. So on here, it's also tells you measures performance over a period of time, comparing revenues with expenses. A positive net worth indicates profitability. Something else that I would have to do as a banker in my past life is actually compare the profit and loss and see what adjustments have been done from year one and year two. That would be a good, Oh, okay. So we have some good feedback from Zakia. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, but yeah, it looks like zero is a good one as well. That's being recommended through the chat. Um, but going back to the profit and loss, as I mentioned, this should be a bird's view and it should actually be your best friend to be able to navigate as to how you're also doing year over year. So if you compare your last year to this year and also maybe even your year to date, it kind of gives you an idea of where you should be. You figure quarter one, two, three, and four. And if you take a look and you are able to compare those periods, it'll also let you know whether you have certain busy seasons or if you're also behind tracks, because that could also be a red flag when you are trying to get some sort of lending and things like that, or maybe even an investor. So let's just say that you're trying to sell your business. These would be things and questions that that they would be asking. So creating your cash flow plan. So let's go through this and see what are some things that you can. I've kind of been giving you sound bites here and there, so hopefully you're picking up on them. But let's talk a little bit deeper about what are some things that you are able to do to navigate your cash flow. So number one is determine starting balance. So identify the cash on hand at the beginning of the period by referencing your income statement. So I've always told my clients, and I want you to ask yourself, especially if you've already started and been running your business for quite some time now, something that I always tell my clients is you should have that number in mind that if, let's just say by the 15th of every month, if you don't have a certain dollar amount or more, you should be concerned. And you should ask yourself, what is going on? What is different? And there could be a variety of different things, right? We all experienced the pandemic. So some of these businesses were forced to be closed. Some of them were forced to be open, which means that they did well during the pandemic. And we ended up finding out that they were essential, right? So those are some things to think about. It could also be an economic downturn. It could also be things that are going with our economy, right? So right now I know that tariffs is done a huge, huge change. And I'm not gonna lie, I do some shopping and sometimes, especially when I'm going on a trip, and I definitely saw a spike of, I think it was like a 40 or 50% difference of what I paid. And I'm like, man, like my my shopping cart, okay, I shouldn't be talking about this in a financial literacy class, but my shopping cart wasn't as as nice as it used to be. So those are some things that could also affect your business, right? So these are some things that you need to think about. Okay, by the 15th, or let's just say the 30th or the 1st, this I usually have about this amount of money. And let's just say call it $50,000, right? And let's just say that you are at $20,000. You're going to want to see what's going on and who's not paying you, or what are some different things that is getting to your bottom line. Forecast inflows and outflows. So, as I mentioned before, you have some sort of projections based on the sales that you're getting. You also may have some projections based on seasonality. So, maybe right now, some of you are going to start getting really busy because of the holidays, or maybe some of you are going to it could be the opposite. Maybe you're going to be really slow during the holidays. So, those are some things that you also want to be able to see what your inflows and outflows. So, inflows meaning the money coming in, outflows meaning the money coming out. So what's coming up due, and then also what money is coming in. Take a look at your accounts receivables. And again, you may want to see if you may want to consider some sort of access to capital, whether that's a line of credit or some sort of loan. I know that during the holidays, especially if you're a retail business or a toy business or distributor, manufacturers, or any of those, you may get a little bit busier during that time. And so you may want to consider a lump sum to be able to buy a huge amount of inventory because of the traffic that you'll be getting to your store or your website. Consider investing in financing. So many clients don't think about investing. They think about more of, okay, now that I have this extra money, where can I spend it? Let's go get, I don't know, do a party for the employees, or let's do whatever it is that, they'd like to do. So instead of doing that, consider investing, but then also we talked about financing earlier. So if you are going to get some sort of financing, again, ask yourself, don't just say, "Oh, I don't want to get a loan." Don't be afraid to get a loan. Just think about, what is that loan going to do for you? I gave you an example earlier that if I am going to gift you $100,000 and I told you you can use it for anything that has to do to improve your business, I'm pretty sure a lot of you would have a lot of different things and projects in mind that could actually improve your business. If you really do believe so, go out there and get the right access amount of capital so that you can scale up your business. Again, we talked about that earlier. It takes money to make money. So make sure that you're doing the right adjustments. Calculate ending balance. So some all cash activities to determine your ending cash and ensure adequacy for obligations. So talked about being able to create that budget and being able to project of what your inflows and outflows are going to be. What is your ending balance going to be? And are you going to be okay for your next cash flow cycle? So let's talk about protect and prosper strategies. So monitor cash regularly. So we talked about that earlier. Have that number in mind. So review your cash flow statements monthly to detect trends and prepare for shortfalls. Again, might be some months out there that you might be really busy or really slow. So you may want to be able to navigate that through those harsh times, because there's some times in where you're needing a little bit more cash because you weren't foreseeing that in the future, or maybe didn't even think about it or plan for it. Something that happened to me, and I hate talking about it, but at the same time, my story can always help others. And I always tell everybody, learn from others' mistakes instead of doing your own first. And pretty much me back in 2007, I opened up an escrow company, but then I was also investing in a lot of different properties. I was flipping homes, reselling them, and I had multiple businesses. So I always like to keep myself busy. And what ended up happening in 2008, I ended up losing my escrow company that I thought was going to be so successful. However, what ended up happening to me is, of course, what I'm teaching today, I was not doing then. So I was not foreseeing of what my market was going to do. So what I didn't know is that about every 10 years, the real estate industry goes up. So what goes up must come down. So that's exactly what happened to me. And so guess what? I went from having a lot of cash to having very minimal cash, to I'm like, oh my goodness, I have way too many properties right now and way over my head. The rents, I can't raise them all. Some of them were in rent control. So there was like a lot of different learning curves that I dealt with it all at the same time. So make sure you're monitoring your cash regularly, but going back to what I was saying about your industry trends, make sure you understand it, because there are times in where You might be really, really busy, but then you may hit an economic downturn, and then all of a sudden you went from being really busy to not busy at all, and maybe not that much cash in your account. So just be very careful and be very mindful of what your industry is doing, but then also your clients. Build a cushion. So really important, all of you should have a savings account. For me, what helps me is I have, yes, a savings account that is immediately available to me, but then I also have a savings account that is non-existent to me. So what does that mean? That every time that I get some sort of check from my client or any type of income, a certain percentage will go ahead and go into my savings account. My apologies. I just noticed that there is a couple of questions on here. Alicia, I don't know if Alicia still has a question, but I am allowing you to talk. You might be on mute. Okay, no more question. Okay, Beth doesn't have a question. Oh yeah, Beth does have a question. Beth, do you have a question? All right. Well, I don't hear you, so we could always. Oh,
Hi, Valerie.
hi Beth, how are you?
I have three Q&A questions today, and I got an
Okay, let's.
email to send me, and please send me an email today.
Okay, sounds good. I'll make sure to do that. Are you able to send me did you send me an email already?
I did.
Okay, perfect. Well, it hasn't came up, so
What's
which is
your
a good thing because
email
then I get
gonna
distracted. I'm
be?
kidding. All right, perfect. Well, I'll make sure before we get off this call that I have your email just in case it doesn't go through. But all right, so manage receivables and payables. So we talked about that earlier. Invoice promptly, offer early payment discounts, and negotiate longer payment terms with suppliers. Now, typically I like to make my classes a little bit more interactive, but it's a little hard when we're on a webinar. But invoice promptly. So this means if somebody owes you money, make sure that you're sending that invoice. I have had clients and we're like, Valerie, I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, okay, well, when's the last time you sent your invoices? And I remember I had a client with a huge stack of invoices, and I'm like, it sounds like you might need some help from somebody to do that for you. But make sure that you're invoicing promptly and also make sure that you're setting out reminders. Sometimes life happens. I know that today one of my clients had an issue with one of their employees and they're waiting for a proposal to come out. And, so pretty much operations could stop because maybe you don't have an employee that is in that day or somebody that handles your tasks. So be very mindful of those things as well. Offer early payment discounts. So giving your client, hey, you know what? If you're able to pay this in cash, or if you're able to pay this today, or if you're able to pay this before the 15-day period or before your statement gets in, you'll get a 10% discount, 5% discount. And believe it or not, sometimes these ticket items are pretty high up there, and a 5%, 10%, even 2% might sometimes may make a huge difference for them. So if you're offering that to be able to get paid sooner, those are some ways so that you can get paid faster. Negotiate longer payment terms with your suppliers. So if you have payment terms with your suppliers, see if you can navigate to for them to extend when you pay them back. But then also make sure that you know that they're aware, because also if you have business credit or it's linked to your social security or your tax ID or EIN number, then it could actually negatively impact your credit score as well, which becomes a different problem for a different class, a different day. Use forecasting tools. So develop a 12-month cash flow projection to plan for future inflows and outflows. So what does this mean? Being able to have some sort of forecasting, QuickBooks, Quicken, and Zero, I believe, have that ability. And it'll tell you kind of just your projections based on your accounts receivables and what you're bringing in of what you should have in the future. So these are some really important strategies for you to take a look at. Something else that I can think of maybe that is not talked about that, and again, it's maybe because of my background, is being able to use different tools such as invoicing. Like an invoicing company, maybe that'll help you with that. Also being able to have merchant services, right? So there's some merchant services provider, meaning when you take credit card payment, Some of these companies are now giving you the same day money, and where sometimes maybe it takes a week, 2, 3 days. And so those are some things that you may want to consider is being able to see how you can receive the payments faster so that your cash flow continues working and flowing easily. Options to manage cash flow, liquidity and financing. So being able to maintain 3 months plus reserves is really important, especially for those slow months. Use line of credits and credit cards and consult bankers for financing. Again, going back to what is money going to do for you when you borrow it? What is it going to do for your business? What is it going to do for your cash flow? I know that I have a couple of clients that they don't want to take on those big government contracts because of the amount of money that it's going to tie them up for other projects. So in that case, what should you do? You should maybe consider a revolving line of credit. Couple things about lines of credit. They are not like loans. Loans, you pay them back for a certain amount of time and it's paid off. Lines of credit means that as soon as you touch it, the interest starts charging. So what does that mean? That if you are going to use a line of credit, you want to pay that back as soon as possible, or continue using it, paying back, using it and paying back. I always recommend everybody to have credit cards. And the way that I use credit cards and I advise my clients to use credit cards is to get a credit card, a business credit card, number one. Number two, a business credit card that's going to report to the Business Credit Bureau so that you do establish some sort of business credit. But then more importantly, use it to be able to manage your cash flow. And what does that mean? Well, if I go to the store today and I buy some supplies and I swipe that credit card, guess what? I have, depending on when I swipe it and when my statement cycle is, I have anywhere from 15 to 45 days to be able to pay that money back interest free without having to pay any interest. That's also a different way of how I travel for free because I leverage my credit cards appropriately. I use them, I pay them back, and what does that happen? I am able to not pay any interest, and I also can gain some points to be able to travel, or even some of these cards do offer cash. So that's just a bonus on top. So in this case, you win instead of the lender, but then you're also delaying your payables. What does this mean? Instead of paying your debt back right away while you make that money back, you're delaying your payables. So now you have some time, anywhere from 15 to 45 days, to be able to pay that lender back. And then now, guess what? You're getting free financing. Of course, not all of your vendors and suppliers are going to accept credit cards. Some of them prefer for you to use cash, which would be a line of credit. Line of credit, you're able to use that money, pay them back, and then maybe the vendor will give you a 10% discount or vendor discount to be able to do that. Again, consult your bankers for financing, and then also have a good relationship with your accountant to be able to give you guidance as to when to navigate and do these type of moves. Operational efficiency, so improve inventory management, optimize accounts payable, and lease instead of buy. So there are some benefits to leasing instead of buying. So make sure that you go with your accountant and be able to navigate through those different options. I know that for myself, there are certain things that I'm looking to lease because it's also could be potentially be a tax write-off to a business owner. Optimize accounts payable. So as I mentioned earlier, accounts payable, that's something that you want to delay without having to pay interest. So we just talked about leveraging a credit card to do a lot of your operating expenses. I have some clients also that do their payroll through a credit card and they pay it back each month, and they are one gaining points, but then also being able to navigate their accounts receivable and also being able to delay their payables. And then improve inventory management. So being able to have either one, an application that's going to help you with the inventory management. I know AI is really good nowadays to be able to learn when you should be ordering inventory. So those are some things that you may want to consider. Or just have somebody that does really, really good at your inventory management, because you don't want to have too much inventory at a time, but you don't want to have little inventory at a time, because What happens if a client is looking to get some sort of inventory? You want to make sure you have enough, but you also want to make sure you're not shortfalling yourself. How to manage receivables, so credit policies and invoicing. So set clear credit terms and conduct credit checks. So as you are, especially if you're doing those large ticket items, like maybe 100,000, whatever it might be, you may want to run some credit or even do some references, especially if you are a supplier or a manufacturer distributor and you have repayment terms with these companies. It is okay to do credit checks and it is okay for you to ask for their bank information, like bank information as far as how much money they have in the account. When I worked at the bank, I would get those all the time and where I would have to call the client, hey, the supplier is asking for this information. Is it okay to release it? I would have to fill it out, how long they've had the relationship with the bank, also what their average balance is and what their current balances are. So that's another reason you want to be able to manage your cash flow because it's really important, especially when doing business with others. Invoice promptly and accurately. So make sure that you are sending out your invoices. I did have a few weeks ago and where my client actually kept telling me, hey, Valerie, I need your invoice. I need your invoice. I was the one that was taking long. And we all want those clients, right? But invoicing, make sure that you're doing it promptly and accurately. And then implement systematic collection processes. So if they're not paying you, what are you going to do? Most likely you're going to have one of your associates give them a call, let them know, hey, what are some repayment terms that we can do? Can you maybe pay half now, pay later? And again, sometimes this does happen. You got to remember these are your clients. This may happen to you as well. So just make sure that you're being mindful and give them a call and see how you might be able to also help. Monitoring and communication. So monitor aging and automate invoicing. So as I mentioned, there are some clients out there, or even if you're doing some public work, that it may take up to 6 months or more to be able to get paid back. So make sure that you're being very careful as to which clients are doing this. If it's something that, it's just customary that they're doing, so maybe you may not want to extend more credit to them until they pay a certain amount. I know that that's happened, especially in the logistic business, when they go pick up some inventory or they come pick up an order and their client maybe has not paid them. And so they have to make a call, hey, make a payment so that I can pick this shipment up for you. So make sure you're monitoring your accounts receivables. If you're a contractor, you may want to also monitor your work in progress report as well. Make sure that your projects are coming in time. Maintain regular customer communication. So as I mentioned, make sure that communicating, this might happen to you. There's a lot of things going on with our world right now that might mess up when you get paid back. Offer multiple payment options, as I mentioned. Earlier, you may want to consider maybe changing your invoicing or your merchant services, or maybe even consider doing ACH. There's also Zelle. There's different forms of payment. So when you limit it to just cash or you limit it to just check, maybe the client manages their receivables by maybe doing credit cards. So you may want to consider accepting credit card if you don't already do so. All right, so we're at 148. So yes, I did mention today was a little bit longer, but I think you understand now. But yeah, so let's conclude. So know your numbers, use financial statements to understand your business. I mentioned earlier the balance sheet and also the profit and loss, right? Those are two key financial statements on there and where you can see a bird's view of your overall health of the business. Plan and forecast. So project cash inflows and outflows to avoid shortfalls. We talked about certain applications that you might be able to leverage as long as they are up to date so that you can know when might be your slow times or your really good times for you to be able to have your different projects, and then protect your cash. So build reserves, manage receivables, and control expenses. We talked about being able to have that number in mind, right? We talked about that, and hopefully everybody here today has a number in mind of, okay, every 15th or every first, I should have X amount of dollars in there. If you don't, what is it that you're going to do? You're probably going to go take a look at who owes you money. So make sure that you have a receivables report, account receivable report. And then also take a look at your expenses. What are you spending your money on? And let's talk about what are some things that you may be able to reduce or be able to pivot or change so that you can stay profitable. Remember, the goal out of this class is to be able to stay profitable and not be in the red and also not be in zero, because then that means you're not making any money and we're not here to volunteer in our business. Prosper with guidance, so use templates, tools, and expert advice to fuel growth. And then here on the right, you will see all of the different references that we use for today's class. SCORE is also another really good resource as well. And then also, of course, we talked about the SBA. Now on here, you have my Calendly link. So if you do want to schedule a one-on-one meeting 30-minute meeting with me, I'd be happy to do so. And now I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And again, Jeannie, thank you so much for hosting us today and allowing us to have this class.
You're very welcome. Any questions? There were so many questions during the presentation. So
if there's any app for inventory, Lily, I am not 100% sure that I can think of right now, this moment. I know that sometimes your merchant service, oh my goodness, what is it called? Your POS system will manage that for you if it has that feature. Or if you have a POS system or some sort of Clover or something like that, they also have applications that you can go on there. I did want to mention Evia actually does AI-driven solutions. So if you're looking to do something customized for your company specifically, that'll do it all for you. We also have those services as well.
okay, we have another question.
Thank you, Nina. I always welcome those comments. Tell me more. Just kidding. Thank you for joining. Okay, let's see. Commonwealth Beverages and Dispensing Companies.
Well, do you recommend one version of QuickBooks versus another version? Desktop, online, etc.?
Okay, well, for me, if you ask me, for me, I like the desktop version, but it's because I'm really old school. However, I do know and understand that if you do the web version, it's actually a little bit cheaper. They both pretty much function the same. Actually, if anything, the one that is through web, you can pretty much essentially log in anywhere, which I know for me, I would have to have my laptop. So that's just something to think about.
Okay.
But yeah, well, looks like no more questions, and then I don't see
Then,
anything.
before we go, I have a quick announcement. This is for the small businesses within the city of LA, not the county of LA, city of LA. We have a new grant, 10,000 for no employees, and if you have employees under them 5 or less employees, you're qualified for 15,000 grant called Micro Enterprise Recovery Grant. So your total annual revenue should be less than $1 million. And if you are established on or before March 2020, you are qualified for the grant. So if you have any questions and if you want to apply for this grant, please let me know. Shoot me an email and I'll be able to help you out.
Awesome. That's
All
a
right.
great resource. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
You're welcome. Just
Well, I think this is the end, right? Until next year.
Hey. I
Yeah.
know. This concludes our series.
Is everybody gonna be okay? Okay.
You and I are not gonna be okay. We'll catch up.
I'm kidding. Well, no, I know I'll see you around. I'm sure at one of the events.
Yes.
Everybody, it was great to be here with you today. Let me know if you have any questions. I will go ahead and send this over a couple with additional resources in just a moment to Jeannie. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have the great rest of your week, and then I'll see you hopefully next year. Bye, everyone.
Yes. Bye. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.